Hey folks, Steve here with a special Napoleon video for you today. This is continuing on our coverage of the role-playing solitaire game from GMT, centered all around being Napoleon Bonaparte. Now, in my demonstration video that I had posted earlier, I had to do a false start. I lost the game immediately, but I am at the end of my second playthrough. And I think what I'm going to do for this video, this is a post-mortem for that playthrough. I'm also probably going to do a cut here at some point very soon, and I'm going to play another session, and then I'm going to talk about how the second session went, or more than that if it ends prematurely, and we'll talk about kind of how things all played out. Now, this isn't a review. I'm just going to talk about a lot of what happened in the game. Um, Trying not to talk too much in terms of details, so I don't spoil too much. If you're a little worried about that, though, and you don't want to see or hear about all the different permutations that the game can take you down, you may not want to watch this video. So, not often that I say, don't watch this video, but you may not want to watch this video. It may include spoilers. So, if you're interested in really playing this game yourself and experiencing everything fresh and absolutely new, this video may not be for you. But if you're just interested to see how this went for me over a few playthroughs, then that might be appropriate. Now, for this second, true playthrough, through good luck, I'd say, I think I played intelligently, and I knew when to hold them, when to fold them, but I did get pretty lucky in some very critical ways that allowed me to achieve what is probably the best result possible in the game. So, in terms of our ending, our Napoleon here is the Emperor of Europe. He has reached a piece of Europe right before he dies, actually. Um, so he beats around Europe. He does very well, forces a lot of folks into treaties and everything. And he, right at the end of the game, or at least I think it's feasible to have done this, uh, we are we got the Peace of Europe Treaty, which is saying that Napoleon dies on the throne having achieved the peace of Europe. He goes down as the greatest ruler since Augustus and permanently alters the course of European and world history. I also have a legitimate son via a French empress, which means that we die on the throne with a legitimate heir, whether as Emperor of the French or Emperor of Europe, in this case, Emperor of Europe. And he founds a dynasty that rules France for decades to come. Um, and then we even extended the limits of glory, which glory is functionally a victory point calculation, but importantly, what you want to do is try to work your way up to hitting 100. Then it doesn't matter kind of where you end, so long as you hit 100 at some point in the game, sort of a threshold to meet. And I did that. So no matter what level of success attained above, you are not truly following in the footsteps of Napoleon unless you extend the limits of glory. If it was on the track, which it is for me, you have done so. So it is the ultimate ideal ending, I guess, for Napoleon. He will die of stomach cancer regardless, but he will do so not isolated or exiled in a faraway place, but as the head of a new dynasty to have control over much of Europe for many decades to come. That's a pretty good result. Gosh darn it! Now, how did I get there? Well, I'll say this much. I think the early game, when you're playing the commander deck, you don't really have a lot of great options. Like, you tend to be reactive. The cards come up, you do what you can with them, and you just keep playing through, which is appropriate. You're not in control of much, so you're really just engaged on things. You're trying to get situated. Any dings against your glory are kind of a wash because you're not really affected by that. But as you get through Brumaire, the Brumaire event, and become the first consul, that's when the game really starts to open up because you start making more decisions. The cards that start coming in, you have to start thinking, okay, well, what do I want to do right now? What can I do right now? How do I want to proceed? And can I take some risks and some gambles? So there's decisions like, do you want to pursue this particular campaign? It's optional. It's up to you. Do you want to go to Egypt? Do you want to go and fight in Syria? Is that a distraction from other things that you have going on? And that's kind of an interesting thing. Like, you definitely want to be getting glory consistently, which is going to cause you to want to do these campaigns. On the other hand, if you fail, it can send you into a death spiral. And so you have to really marshal your capabilities carefully. And if you can get into a good groove like I did, you have a pretty good expectation of what it's going to take to win and win consistently. Now, the one really key element here that saved my bacon is this Napoleon's Luck marker. It's basically a free reroll or allows you to ignore a card once per turn. And I had a pretty good idea of like, oh, that's a crappy card. I'm going to ditch that card. It doesn't. It will mean I better roll really good in the campaign, but I need to avoid that card. Or I didn't get too many bad cards, and I would get to the campaign when you would do the combat die rolls effectively to see if you win the campaign. And if I rolled really badly, I would use the luck and try again, and it worked out. I don't think I really lost. I don't think I lost any campaigns. I did lose on some expeditions because I just didn't have many resources dedicated to them. Um, Probably the biggest contributing factor to the victory in the way that I managed to get it was that at the midpoint of the game, I'd say around 1802, we had at one point Austria, Prussia, and Russia all allied and some permutation of neutral. And we just had Spain, because Spain did eventually go against us, almost inevitable. But Spain was the only like active enemy that we really needed to deal with. And to be honest, the Spanish campaign card isn't that tough of one to try to beat because for me, Wellington, this is going to be a little spoiler, eventually Wellington enters the game. And you can see he provides malices to your, penalties to your die roll as it relates to Portugal and Spain. But he did not come out of the deck until very late. And by the time he did, I had enough commanders that I could rely on. I had enough resources basically at my disposal that, against Napoleon, I could consistently win the day and do very well. Um, but there were many, many turns where I was just fighting Spain. I got really lucky on these diplomacy rolls. So the diplomacy rolls, you roll and it either shifts them down or it knocks out a treaty. Well, for Austria, Prussia, and in Russia, there were several turns where even without bonuses, I was rolling enough to keep them stable. So if you have back to back turns like that, where I'm not really needing to worry about extra campaign effort, I could concentrate my effort on Spain. And the nice thing is, as best as I can tell, the Spanish campaign card just keeps cycling. I don't think it actually can be removed, as best as I can tell. It's really hard for me to be 100% certain of that. This could be errata, and I'll just show what I mean there. So there's a Napoleon in Spain card. Now that says to ditch the card, but in the rule book stipulates which potential campaigns leave the game permanently, and Napoleon in Spain is not one of those called out in the rule book, I don't think, unless I didn't fully comprehend the errata. So I played it, and this could be where I got it wrong. I played it that Napoleon in Spain just keeps happening. There is no treaty that ends it. There is no pause on fighting Spain. So we're just continually fighting in Spain, continually fighting in Spain. And every time we win it, we were getting uh, 10 glory. So over the course of several turns, based on the glory I had built up in the initial parts of the game, I could just keep racking up glory, even taking, hits to glory here or there. Over enough turns, I managed to bump out against the limits of glory. Now, here's a couple of things. If we were fighting other campaigns, like Austria, Prussia, and Russia got in the war, we'd be fighting a different campaign, and then we would end up with different treaties that would also give us glory. Um, but I never outright conquered anybody because of that delay there. If there's another campaign in the box, we have to deal with the Spanish ulcer expedition, which is an additional thing. But if you're doing Napoleon in Spain, you don't do the expedition. So I wasn't having diversified resource expenditure um, because we were focusing on Spain. We didn't have to focus elsewhere. And at the very tail end of the game, I did find myself at war with Prussia and Russia one more time. And that ended up going for 3 combat rounds. It was kind of tense, but at that point, I wasn't really worried about losing as much. So we were able to see that through to victory. Now, if the errata is that the Napoleon in Spain card is only played once and then removed from the game, then we wouldn't have. There'd be some turns where we just wouldn't have a campaign, right? If there's some errata that says, oh, these guys go to something else, and you don't have an option, well, you wouldn't have a campaign card, um, and then we would only be worrying about Spanish ulcer, in which case that might actually have been worse. We could maybe still have expected to win most of the time, but we would have only been getting 5 glory. So kind of an interesting bit there. I guess if the errata affects it the other way, and I was only going to be getting like 5 glory, it's maybe less likely that I would have hit the limits of glory, but I was doing well enough in every other respect that I probably would have hit limits of glory anyway. So certainly a victory. I think I played well in terms of the decision making, how I wanted to kind of be set up. The funny thing is how reactive I became even as emperor, because once you're emperor, you have to pick campaign cards. It's no longer optional, but what campaign cards you pick are kind of set for you by the diplomatic alignment, and you don't have a lot of control over that. You have just a little tiny bit, so long as you have Talleyrand giving you diplomacy points. And really, that's more just who do you want to try to keep out of it so you can focus on the other ones when you're at war. But you end up accruing a lot of great commanders, some of which I never ended up using as sort of a last reserve. But you get some of these good leaders. Some of them cost glory to use, and so I would try not to use them if I could help it, um, and just use them for the really tough campaigns that I knew would be difficult, and that seemed to work out okay. Now I never got Poland out. That just never happened. By the end, I was willing to peace out and get peace of Europe. So sorry, Polish folks, we didn't get you independence this time. Um, that lateness of Wellington was just a huge factor. We did have Napoleon had a mistress for a while. Then we divorced our wife. We got a French empress wife card come out, and that enabled us to get a legitimate son. We also had a bastard son from the mistress, so we ended up for a long time. I didn't have any sons or heirs or whatever, but that eventually came in towards the late stages of the game. As the emperor deck started getting thinner and thinner, we could start to see more of those cards come into play. Um, so yeah, I think the luck's very important. Now, I could imagine if you wanted to, you could play this on like easy mode and give yourself additional Napoleon's luck usages per turn, and you could make it harder by not allowing you to use Napoleon's luck at all. So if you want a baked in, easy mode, you can turn that probably into just getting to use that more than once. It's a precious resource. You really have to think about, like, am I going to eat this right now? Because many cards, when they go to the discard pile, every turn they just go right back into the deck, and you got to shuffle it, so you don't know exactly when you're going to see the crappy card that could hurt you if you've seen it before, but it could come up. So you're definitely looking, okay, when am I going to use my luck to ditch this card because I don't want that on the board? Like, one is requiring you to get an extra victory in a campaign. I hate that card. That card sucks. You ditch that sucker, because the way the campaign system is set up, you generally want to win the campaign on the first combat round, which makes sense. That's sort of, Napoleon wants a stunning victory to win the campaign if he can help it. Prolonged campaigns are bad. You will eventually run out of resources. If you get stalemates, that makes the next die roll even harder. So if you don't win that, if you stalemate your first combat, you're in trouble, deep trouble. You need to, if there's nothing, if you don't have anything else at your disposal, you need to go deep, deep, deep on that second combat round, because you don't want to lose that one. If you stalemate again, it's only going to get worse and worse. You'll eventually get defeated, and then your campaign could be on a death spiral trajectory. And I managed to avoid that, by trying to avoid those cards wherever possible. In some cases, like this card for Prussia, this is a really ouch card to deal with, but you got to deal with it sometimes. So I had to deal with that. That made any campaigns against Prussia difficult. more difficult, which is why, if I could, I would generally try to spend my diplomacy points on trying to keep Prussia from slipping down, just because like that card's much more annoying to deal with. Ran into things where Bonaparte's family would enter the board and go up into your family box, and it hurts your glory. It saps your glory by having these brothers who've got nothing to do. So you have to try to get them aligned as monarchs of countries, which I thought was an interesting mechanic. Um, but yeah, as you're going through the card, it'd be like, man, I really want to get like this is a great card to get during the draw phase. You want to get a nice combat modifier card for you. That's another good one. Um, there's these different, like this one sucks. This is one you want to ditch. You don't want to have to get another additional victory. That's a crappy card you don't want to have to deal with if you can help it. Um, or I guess that one should have been removed from the deck, but oh well, the game's over. Yeah, so I mean, overall, I think I played well. I also got fortunate. Had Wellington come out sooner, that could have been a problem. Had I found myself having to fight Austria and Prussia and Russia more frequently than I did, while also dealing with the Spanish ulcer, that could have used up too many of my resources. And the weird one was like Russia and I went to war pretty early, and once we got them into the Allied state, or however I dealt with it, like that was the campaign in Russia, and I didn't have to. There was, I think I was playing this right. Like there was a situation where we were hostile, these guys were allies, but because there was no Russia campaign card anymore, because you remove that from play, um, Russia just sat hostile and would really only leave hostility if one of these of Austria and Prussia became hostile, and then we played a campaign against, either all three or two of the three, one of them having to be Russia. That allowed me to shift them to neutral at the end of the game when it was like that or whatever it was. So there's certain things like you can't end conflict with Russia until you have another campaign, but they need an ally to do that. In my case, so there was kind of some stagnant time where again Russia was hostile, but there was no card, no campaign card that I could use with it, and so I was fighting in Spain. So there could be something weird there. Maybe I got something wrong, but I would definitely attribute to my stunning victory to just that luck of being able to focus on one enemy at a time, fighting just the Russian campaign, while Austria and Prussia had been defeated early and were made allies. Being able to just fight Spain when everybody else was some version of allied or neutral like this, and being able to just fight that repeating campaign. Again, I'm not sure that was possible, but we played it that way, and that worked out. So I could look at this first real full playthrough as well. I got fortunate, and it could be with some errata. Maybe I wasn't playing something correctly, and that benefited me. So I don't feel like I'm like, ooh, I'm the master of this game already. No, I think things worked out well, and best of my ability to um, adjudicate victory or adjudicate the rules and then get to victory just kind of worked out that way. So that's sort of one big playthrough. Now I do want to try again all the way from point zero. It's going to take some time to get the cars reconfigured, but I definitely want to play this a few more times before I get to a review. I'm having a good time with it though. Like it's a very fun experience. Like it is neat the way that the board starts to evolve from a commander to first consul. I will say I did expedite my way through into becoming emperor like as soon as I could. I didn't wait around. As soon as I could become first consul, I did. As soon as I could become first consul for life, I did. And then as soon as I could become emperor, I did, which caused some things to happen earlier than I think normally they would be. But that speed was important, again, because I wanted to, try to get into a good place where I could, defeat a particular faction, get a treaty going, and not be fighting too hard of campaigns against too many enemies. And I guess from a Napoleonic mindset, like that's a pretty good one, right? If you can focus and defeat one enemy at a time and do it fast, that's kind of the Napoleonic style you want, right? Shut them down quick, move on, shut them down quick, move on. And if I could keep my momentum, that was what was going to keep me in good shape, and it did. So I think back to my to try to relate this to another war game in my Nations in Arms grand campaign. That's how we got to a French victory, because we were able to focus due to the treaties. It just worked out. We were able to focus, and so long as we could focus on just Spain, if we could focus on just Russia, that pays off really huge dividends. So I'm pretty pleased with that experience so far. I'm pretty pleased with just the way the game came out, and I never had to deal with abdication, which is cool. So all right, well, I'm gonna put a cut here. So this video may be, you may only be halfway through this video. I'm gonna go play this game some more, and we'll do some more post-mortem commentary on how some of my additional playthroughs go. Okay, here we are after another full game played to the end, and in this one, Napoleon survived until the end. Again, that stomach cancer would get him. But in the process, we have put the Bonaparte brothers on the thrones of European countries, and have also, in effect, accepted natural frontiers. Technically, I didn't really play this card for its intended purpose, but at the very end of the game, it sort of made sense to say, like, well, I guess that's, if nothing else, I would play that, I guess, and say, okay, we are remaining stable in our French borders. We've defended. We've not conquered Europe necessarily, but Napoleon dies as Emperor of the French. I did not have a legitimate son. I had a bastard son in this game, and I ended up, for a long time, having trouble with my brothers not being on thrones and sapping my glory. I actually ended the campaign at 36 glory. At the highest mark, we were at 74, and then I just kind of couldn't get out from underneath some troubling campaigns, and we attrited glory over time due to the domestic politics stuff. Now, one thing I had tried to do, really what had happened was, in the War of the Third Coalition against Austria and Russia, I ate it, and I had to do the Patrie en Danger campaign to defend France. I won that by the skin of my teeth, and managed to come back and win the next year. But all from there, we had some troubles. We were continuously trying to, um, win the fights, and there were really tough campaigns throughout. I would win, I'd get some glory, but more than once we had to do La Patrie en Danger, though I succeeded in defending every time. So it ended up just being a tough one. I became emperor later than the last campaign. In fact, later than historical. Brumaire I had a really hard time, because Brumaire was like never coming up in the deck. It happened very late, and so we were kind of off our schedule there. Um, and I did a couple of things just to see. So I decided to go with the Kingdom of Poland, which um, was interesting. So with the Kingdom of Poland option, you're basically saying you're going to stay hostile with Russia for the rest of the game. So even with treaties, like, you can get some of the benefits of treaties, but you're not going to be at peace with Russia for the rest of the game. But you get some bonuses out of that. You do get your extra commander. You do get an extra DRM for combat, anyone combat in all campaigns, which is a pretty nice card to have. But it also makes all your campaigns tougher, because you're always dealing with Russia being a part of it, and sometimes Austria and Russia. That's a hard campaign card, because you're forced to fight multiple rounds basically. So it's a little tricky there. Had I just taken Grand Duchy of Warsaw like I did in the first game, I could have maybe had an easier time. And in addition to that, one of the things I did was I never went to war with Spain. Basically, every time a card would come up that would affect the relationship with Spain, I used my luck marker to bury it, and we managed to avoid going to war with Spain a couple of times. The only problem would be I use my luck marker, and then I have a need to maybe use it again, only I can't at that point, and I got dinged for other things that I would have wanted to bury with the luck marker. And so this was not as a successful a campaign as my first one, which is a good thing, I guess. Like, despite my own efforts to replicate my success, the cards came out different. I made some different decisions. I can still say this is a victory of sorts, right? We never have to abdicate. To me, that's a victory. That's a personal victory, I guess. We did not abdicate. We die. We maybe don't reach the heights of glory. We don't conquer all of Europe, but we went from a lower level noble from Corsica to the Emperor of France, and we have brothers that are now royalty. I mean, that's an achievement. Poor old Steve here can be happy with. Maybe not Napoleon himself, but so it goes. So this was an interesting campaign. What I did realize is I probably did not play something correctly in the first try, which was related to the first consul treaties. I kind of misunderstood the verbiage and the rules, and I thought you still would break the treaties with the die rolling and the diplomacy track, but that is actually not the case. So apparently, like things things like this aren't going to decay by themselves. So while this has been in the game for a long time, none of those cards came up, and it was in play when we became emperor. But all throughout First Consul, this doesn't just go away during the diplomacy phase. The die rolls don't matter. That's you functionally don't need a roll for those countries that you have those treaties with, and we're talking likely having treaties with Prussia and Spain, which means you're really left fighting with Austria or Russia in those first consul years in those campaigns, essentially, or even just the beginning of the Empire campaign. So there's certainly things there that maybe in my first game, because I broke I inadvertently were breaking treaties early, maybe too early, that paid to my benefit because I started the cycle earlier and I focused on one and I kept them from ever being aligned against me consistently. Whereas here, that delay kind of changes the order of operations there a little bit. At one point, I had conquered Austria, which was cool, and I was hoping to milk all the glory out of that as I could. But I ended up losing a campaign against just Russia, and not the Russian campaign, mind you. There's some weird oddities in the way that the cards get picked for the campaign, but it was basically a Austria-Russian campaign, but without Austria being a part of it because they were conquered. But I ended up losing that campaign, and that forced while I was able to defend myself with the secondary defending France campaign, having lost a campaign meant that Austria became unconquered. So that was a bummer. I didn't really get the benefit of having previously conquered Austria, or at least as much benefit as I wanted out of it. So I had a good time with it. I mean, the choices I made were different. The cards came out in different orders. Different events happened at different times. I'd say I got hurt with worse luck than I had in the first game in any case. So I still think it was a fine playthrough. So yeah, this was a good little experience here of trying it differently. What I'll probably do is call this a video and just kind of show that yeah, you can end up with different results, different events going on. There's a couple of spots of errata I think that still may need to be ironed out in the game, but generally it's been a good experience. So I think what I'll do from here is I'll probably play another campaign before I seek to do a review video, but I'll do that offline. I won't do a post-mortem commentary on. I'll just play it for my own enjoyment, and we'll probably get a review going here in the very near future. So thanks for watching. Hope this was interesting. Maybe not directly helpful to you in terms of the whole game, because again, I don't want to spoil too much. Your game experience should be your game experience with this, given it's a solitaire role-playing game. But we'll hit that and more in the review. So thanks for watching. Take care. Keep gaming.